Welcome to Sex and Breakfast, the sexy way to start your day. Dishing out sexpert advice and spicy insights about sex, love, and everything in between. Hosted by sex coaches and therapists from around the globe. Let's see what's cooking on the grill today. Well, since this is our very first episode, we'll be sharing with you our backgrounds as well as the MEBES model we use in our private practices. I'll start. So, hi everyone. My name is Nicole Santiago. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. My background is a little extensive. I was in theater, film, acting, and then landed in private aviation, where I work now as a private flight attendant and a certified sex coach. So as a sexologist, my interest started over 10 years ago when I was an advocate and hotline operator for rape, domestic violence, and sexual assault survivors. I really enjoyed working with survivors, but the deep initial trauma wasn't as interesting to me as making sure people had sexual healing for years to come. So that's when I started my work as a sex coach and really loved helping people just dive into their future relationships, specifically when they have a lot of sexual trauma and healing. And when I say sexual trauma, I'm not just talking about the trauma that we talk about that I was just mentioning right now. I have clients that are coming in with adult relationships with trauma ranging from rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment to childhood shame or, religious stigma or other issues that range from body image and different stuff like that. So trauma can come in all shapes and sizes and variants. So that's kind of where I work with my clients right now in that arena with men and women, and just trying to make sure that they have a healthy sexual expression as an individual and or with their partners. I also grew up as a devout Christian in a very conservative household and still practice my faith. So I've been very involved in helping people of faith heal and, thrive in their sexuality. So I'm excited to be a part of this podcast and bring in my faith and artistic and trauma-informed expression into this podcast.
Nicole, I love that you have such a well-rounded background. I think it brings such a good perspective, because I think so many people think that we can be very just singular focused, and the fact that you have such great background skills, knowledge from a variety of different things really brings a richness, I believe, to the work that you do. Shall I go? Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. You're
Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Erica Lemke. I am a Northern California girl who lives in Salt Lake City, Utah. So also there is a predominant culture, Mormon culture in Utah. I am not Mormon, but I do see a lot of clients within the faith. And that's a little bit of a challenge for someone who really, I'm a spiritual person, but not necessarily a religious person. So having a different viewpoint has been really pretty interesting for me to learn about this, not just the religion, but just in general. I have a diverse background, like Nicole. I come from marriage and family background, marriage and family therapy background, kinesiology, gerontology. So I've very much been in the helping professions pretty much my entire life, with also certifications in ICF life and wellness coaching, as well as sex coaching and sexology. And I think I always loved talking about sex, even when I was a young person, and people came to me to just discuss life, and it inevitably would end up talking about sex. And so for the longest time, I thought, okay, I enjoy this. This is really wonderful, but I wanted to get more of a sense of professionalism and really just more of an education around it. So later on in life, much later on in life, in middle life, actually, I went back to school to get my certification in sexology and sex coaching. So, and I didn't mention this before, but I am a certified sex and relationship coach and board certified sexologist. And all of the helping professions, all the knowledge that I have, I think really brings, again, a well-roundedness to this profession. But I love talking about sex, and I feel very comfortable in that space. So I thought, is there a potential that I can actually make a career out of this? So the fact that I can do this for a living and starting kind of in my third act is quite miraculous. And my specialty is working with people in midlife, because I think that's where I'm smack in the middle of it. And I see so many women, men too, but primarily women, focused so much on so many different changes with perimenopause and menopause in midlife, body changes, things that are happening in life, whether it's a divorce, it's a death, it's caring for aging parents, maybe also caring for children or grandchildren. And I think there's just a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of change in this transition in life. And that also has to do with sex. Our bodies are different. Our views may be different around sex at this time. So I come from a place of support in how I can really help these women and their partners really explore and embrace and express their true sexuality with joy, confidence, and pleasure. And so with this podcast, I bring, I guess, a knowledge base of everything in midlife. And I really want to address the fact that it's never too late to learn anything about sex, whether you've never had an orgasm before or we're multi-orgasmic and all of a sudden now you can have an orgasm, and it's all across the board. So I love working with this population, and I'm just really excited to be part of this beautiful sisterhood that I see in front of me, and hope to bring this to not only to the nation, but to the world, and what we all bring to this table around sex and sexuality.
The nation. I love that. I love that. We're all doing such incredible things here, and I'm just so honored to be able to share this space with you all. And my name is Dr. Norlin, and I am a sex and cannabis coach and a sexological body worker. So while I don't do hands-on work now, my training in sexological body work heavily influences my talk-only work with clients. My early research in sexology was focused on ways to support couples within the military resiliency training framework. A mouthful, but since then, my client work has focused on helping people explore conscious cannabis use and finding and experiencing their first play parties and dungeons is a huge joy of mine. So I also discovered that I enjoy helping the sober curious shift their relationship to alcohol within the dating space and find alternatives to elevating their date nights through things like cannabis and other adaptogens. Shifting my relationship to my period has been a more recent interest of mine, and I've been really excited to have conversations with other cyclic beings, meaning people who live by different hormonal phases, and their partners in efforts to help find their personal flow and really hack their hormones. If I'm not in a client session, you can usually find me either at an open mic night, reading poetry, or on the dance floor exploring tango. So I'm just so excited to be here and share my knowledge and experience on this podcast and share this space with you all.
Thank you, Norlin. I think you're incredible. You not only are a doctor, which is amazing, your work in the field is just incredible, and all the women and men that you've worked with and all kinds of people. So thank you so much for all the work that you do. Hello, everyone. My name is Dominique Peters. I was a high school teacher and still am, by the way, but I am an intentional creativity artist also. And I help people with their emotions and their sexuality through creativity. So that's where the intentional creativity thing comes in. But I also help people, women and men, and in between, people who are just wanting to enhance their sex life. And recently, really quite a few married couples have come my way, and I love that. So I have worked for years with an artist, and I am an artist, and I love how creativity has shown me a different pathway through sexuality. And yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominique, and hello, fellow artists as well. Yes, it's just so excited to be here with all of you, with all the diverse background and interests, and bringing in interesting, different mix to all the people that we help or will be helped in the future. So, yeah, I'm Dian Handayani. It's very mouthful. That's because I'm an Indonesian by birth. I grew up with Muslim faith, but I have lived in Europe, and right now I'm living in Singapore. I'm also a sex therapist, coach, and a founder of Nambani. It's my Singapore-based coaching practice. And given my background, I'm always straddling between the West and the East and finding somewhere in between those. I have 14 years of clinical therapy experience. I started as a qualified art therapist working in a major public hospital. And even back then, my passion is always about trying to create safe space for my clients, especially to grow and discover their authentic self. And I believe art therapy and creative expression is one of the way, I'm sure Dominic will agree with that, to find your authentic sexual self as well. So I incorporate various modalities. I have a background and training in somatic experiencing, expressive art therapy, Jungian or depth psychology, coaching, and therapeutic background in my practice. My latest passion is actually helping clients with existential issues. And this is where clients experience those feel and need of you feeling like restless. You want something more in your sexual life. You're probably in a midlife, quarter life change. You don't know where to begin, but you had enough with what you currently have. And so hopefully with this podcast, I would like to bring in those interests as well as interests around cultural differences, especially in the mixed marriage couples, or mixed relationship couples, body image issues. I did have a lot of extensive work with eating disorder as well, sexual shame, anxiety, and those general challenges that impact sexual well-being. And I guess this is where we want to find one thread in common amongst all of us. We are all come from SCU, Sex Coach U, which is that's where we found each other through our training. And SCU was founded by Dr. Patti Britton. And I guess one of the big takeaway that I really appreciate from the program, it's really the MEBES model. And what is MEBES? MEBES model is actually expanding on the work by Gina Ogden. And she has this 4D wheel. It's the wheel that stands, and the MEBES itself is the wheel that stands for mind, emotion, body, behavior, energy, and spirit. And this system represents the 5 parts of our sexual self. And we all talk about a different way of working. So Erica was talking about her latest passion about perimenopause. And Nicole was talking about trauma. And we all have all these different parts of ourselves that impact our sexual self. And at the center of the wheel, it's energy. Interestingly, energy is what keeps the wheel turning. And if you are thinking, I always get this mixed up, actually. Energy, for me, anyway, is include energy and dynamics between the partners and how they are expressed in a relationship. But energy can also means the energy that we feel when we do sex coaching. What do you all think about energy in MEBES? Feel free to chime in.
This energy piece is so important to me because it's the foundation of all of us being beings in a body, and it's such a foundational part of our sexual interactions with people and also within ourselves.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a good point. Anyone else want to chime in on energy?
I'll just say that energy is a big word, and it conjures up just so many different concepts and images for some, or different, if you do a word map based off of the word energy, it can lead to a lot of different pathways. So when I get to this piece of the puzzle with my clients, I mean, that's where I start. I ask them what that word means to them. And sometimes after I hear what they have to share, then we can kind of explore different avenues, especially if they come up blank. And then we can redefine and reframe what this word can mean for them. So it's one of really, really powerful place to explore, I think, energy.
And adding to that, sometimes you can also observe in the coaching session, right? What the energy like when they're talking about a certain sexual issues or problem. Sometimes you can see the conversation, just the energy of the conversation just become low or heavy. There's a lack of energy. But then when they reminiscing about past sexual fun or encounter, you can feel all the energy start to burst out again, and all the excitement and all this. Yeah. Any thoughts from Erica actually around energy, especially with your background in and interest in menopause, perimenopause?
Well, it's interesting because I also have a gerontology degree that's the study of aging. And I think that's a big draw of why I ended up working with, or where I love to work with older folks. And I'm including that in the older folk category because I'm in my 50s, and, you know, a lot changes when we get older. And I think it's a matter of, so many people think that they still need to be doing sexual gymnastics like they were doing in their 20s. And the reality is now they've had a hip that's broken maybe, and now they're recovering for that, or they have an illness, or there are other issues that happen hormonally. And I think it's also about shifting our mindset around what that means for us, and that we don't have to be like we were at a certain point in our past, but to accept where we are right now. And we can build on, our energy and transform that. But I think it has to work for our own unique individual selves and where we are in our lives at the moment.
That's really spot on. And that's also a segue. You mentioned about mind, right? Mind shift. So the E is the energy, is the ingredients that keep the MEBES wheel turning. But there's also other factors that keeps the wheel turning, which is mind. Erica mentioned about mind shift. So in the MEBES wheel, mind includes, like you say, thoughts pattern, or the self-talk, fantasies, or compulsivity, if there's one of the blockages that we have from having connected to our authentic erotic self. In the mind itself, this is where we hear a lot of clients' negative self-talk, right? We call it an overactive monkey mind. And usually it can be very critical, and sometimes noticing the thoughts that shows up around our sexual self can be helpful. And try to find a way to work around that blockages or reframing it. I love what Erica mentioning about how can we shift that mindset, right? And any other thoughts? Sorry, go ahead.
Actually, no, and it's beautiful how you presented that, because I had a number of clients today, and so many of them said the same exact thing. I'm always in my head. And when we're in our heads, we can't be embodied, right? So we can't even access and feel the pleasure and the sensation because we're up here. And either we're thinking about what happened a little while ago, we're thinking about what the future holds, but we're not being present. So a lot of the work I do with my clients is exactly that, trying to get them to get out of their heads, which is mindfulness practices and sensuality practices. They're trying to get them embodied so they can let go of all of those, the monkey mind and the distractions that they have, in order to be present with themselves, with their partners, and really to be able to really just maximize their sense of pleasure and joy and experience with that. So it's, the mind's can be a real tough bugger sometimes.
On top of that, we all know, but I know for people that might be new to the sex conversation, that the mind is the largest sex organ that we have. And so I love to remind clients this too, because, it's not something that we can just disregard. Trying to reshape and recalibrate our thinking from stinking thinking to positive thinking about how we view our bodies, how we view our sexuality, how we connect to our bodies is so important, so that we can turn our mind into this organ that is part of the pleasure and part of what creates like a positive, healing, transformative sexuality, instead of it being something that is constantly getting in our way and like stopping our sexual flow. So mind is super important in the MEBES model.
Yeah, I love what you mentioned about mind as the biggest sex organ. What happened between the legs, but also what happened between our two ears, right? Yeah, and this thinking can really impact. Well, this is a good segue to emotion. So it's not just about mind, but there's also what we think can also influence how we feel. So if we think that we're not good enough, we are too old to have sex, that can impact our E. E in the MEBES is stand aside from energy, is E for emotion. So it can really impact our feeling. Maybe we feel anxious about having sex, or we feel bad. That's the most common feeling. Saying, I feel bad, I feel guilty, I feel not good enough, I feel shameful about my aging body. And all this kind of emotion really can inform our capacity about being intimate with another person.
I recently read Come Together, the follow-up to Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. And she has this beautiful, she calls it the emotional floor plan. And based on how we feel or what state we're in the moment, does that access allow the door to open to lust, and which will allow, sexual feelings and the desire to have sex? Is it possible with your current emotional state? And so, I'm trying to think of, there's care, there's play, there's seeking, but there's also rage and grief. And how do we work with those emotions? And if we're in a particular state of emotion that's not allowing us access to the lust stage, for example, or to access pleasure, how do we help our clients get to a place where they can find a way, whether it's beautiful. She has this, like, you could actually draw your own floor plan and find the little alleyways and the nooks and the little ways that you can get access through the door in order to get to a place where you feel like you're open to have sex and have a sexual experience. So I think that's so important to find out. We have to be with our clients where they are, with whatever they have in the moment. And how do we address that? And how do we get them to a place where they have more access to sex, to sexuality, to pleasure?
Oh, I love that book. I've just finished reading that book as well. And I think she also cited stress as the biggest main factor and the biggest killer. And living in Singapore is a very high-paced country. Stress is the biggest main source of libido killer. And yeah, how do you prioritize your erotic energy as a center of your relationship or your well-being, and competing with taking care of elderly parents, taking care of small kids, paying bills, and all of this, that can be really, really challenging. Yeah, I'm glad that you bring that up. It's really, really read the book if you have time. A really good book. So we talk about mind and emotion. I think we left with two, right? Body.
It's time for the body.
Goodness.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, I can see Dominic is getting excited there. Do you wanna take over there?
For the body?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's one of my specialty. But for me, there's this thing about our body not only as a place where we have to be connected to our feelings and our emotions within our body, but it also ties into the last one, which I won't mention yet. But there's something about when we're using our body to feel what's happening inside of it, whether it's movement or energy or emotion, or like Norlin said, like you're a dancer, me too. So it's this place where we can feel our emotions, and hopefully within the bedroom, we're able to move with our partner in a certain way if you have a partner or by yourself. But even just something as simple as like getting to feel, like I work with women, quite honestly, who aren't even ready sometimes to touch themselves, right? They don't do any kind of sacred touch, aka masturbation. They're not even comfortable doing that. So how can they feel comfortable letting their partner to do whatever they're going to do to them, right? So there's this place where we have to allow our body to feel, and that's how I use the creativity, is through painting, like something as simple as like moving a paintbrush on a canvas. Like that is considered movement. They can work with that. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? How are they moving? So yeah, movement in the body is very important.
Dr. Norlin, you spoke about your experience as somatic. Maybe do you want to explain what is somatic?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. So as a sexological body worker, I am trained to practice hands-on work that includes therapeutic genital touch and genital massage. And the way that shows up in my work is just like Dominique was saying, you might have a client who doesn't know how to touch themselves yet, doesn't know how to self-pleasure, and that feels out of reach for them. And and other sexological body workers can allow space for safely and consensually witnessing and holding space for a person who's going through that for the first time. Because you might be in a talk only session with somebody and say, okay, like this is what self-pleasure is, here's like anatomy, and I'm giving you permission to do this. And then they go home and they could be met with paralysis and fear and shame, especially at looking at themselves with a mirror for the first time. Regardless of gender here, I'm including all bodies in this example. And so as a sexological body worker, I can provide this safe space to be present with somebody who's going through that for the first time, and also be there for couples who are learning how to touch each other in new ways. So accessing the body for some can sort of seem, we don't give it a second thought. But on this other layer and involving sexuality and also recovering from trauma, if that's in your history, it could take somebody creating a safe container. And so I really enjoy bringing that, even though I don't do touch-based practice anymore. This shows up in my practice because I can educate couples on how to create that space for one another through the body.
And I think that's what's unique about your work, because most of us come from talk therapy or talk coaching kind of modalities, including myself, even as a somatic experiencing practitioner. Although we work with the body, but usually access it through not direct touch, unless you are trained on that. Some do, but not in the way that you do. So that's very precious with all this experience you have, and bringing in such a deep and different way of working as well. I guess with Nicole, how do you keep your body present while you are in a long distance relationship and flying all over the world?
Yeah, no, the body is really important, but there's also ways to connect to your body and to connect with partners without physically being there, but having that ability to learn touch in a different way and learn how to be sexual when you are not near someone. That sounds so weird to say. And you're like, wait, what? Well, as a flight attendant, I'm gone a lot. And there's a lot of people in relationships that want to have sex healthy sexual lives that aren't physically with each other all the time. And there are definitely ways and tips and strategies to keep your sex life thriving and healthy without physically needing to be together all the time. And there's lots of really fun toys too that allow you to access each other's bodies without physically being there too. So, we think about sex as this very, very like inboxed thing. But when we expand with the MEBES model, like what body and what sexuality is, there's like so many venues and ways that you can go with it, that this uniform idea of like vaginal, penile like penetration is like, that's just 0.001% of what sex and sexuality is when you really open up the MEBES model and you really start exploring your sexuality.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I guess this is a good segue to explore the S in the MEBES wheel, right? How can you be, okay, the S itself, let's start with the S itself first. So S is the spirit, and spirit can be spiritual, which is different than religious, or it could be the spirit of one's inner self-identity. Sometimes you can hear clients talk about, oh, I feel like a broken spirit when it comes to sex, right? So in this realm, we might want to help our client use more of a I statement to better access their intuition or connect with their sexual being in a more esoteric way. So I guess this is also Dominic's domain, where we can talk about sacred sexuality. Can you be present in spirit even while you are elsewhere in the world, right, Nicole? What's the embodiment spirit of someone who has an aging body, but they still want to embody that authentic sexuality? The spirit can also be a bit challenging. So if you also grow up in a very traditional, strict religious belief, that can be one of the factors, and also can also block the flow of your MEBES wheel in terms of reclaiming your authentic sexuality.
Yeah, and the other thing that comes to mind is like, well, what if you actually don't believe in spirit, right? Like, what if you're an atheist, for example, right? Can you still have the sense of the MEBES wheel, right? And I think you can, because if you're a human in a body, you're thinking and feeling all the time. There's always this sense of something higher than you. You may not even think about it or know what it is, but there's always something more. Even if you don't consider yourself a spiritual being, because you don't even believe in spirit, if you're connected to all of your senses, the 5 senses or more. I had a teacher that once said every opening in your body is one of your senses. So your belly button, for example, could be one of them. Every opening, right? So if you're connected to all of your senses, then you are embodied, right? Somebody back me up.
I wanted to add that the animal aspect of spirit, outside of spirit as it relates to a specific religious belief system, I love presenting the idea to clients that if they feel a little at a loss for finding connection, to think about what animal resonates with them. And sometimes we can do that through pulling an animal card, an oracle deck, or just if they've for a long time felt like they had a kinship with a certain animal, they can channel like the spirit of the fox or the spirit of the snake and bring that kind of energy into the bedroom and use that idea of spirit through animal. I think is really powerful.
That's way cooler than what I was going to say, but but Dominic, going back to like the sensuality component. So I think I do a lot of work with my clients from that lens of, what do you need to have around, set the tone for yourself, right? And in a lot of work I do with clients is also like, what is non-sexual pleasure and sensuality mean? And how are you staying connected to yourself in those little moments where you are here now and present right now with yourself, with a higher self, with nature, whatever you resonate with? And I think that's when we can be in that state of being able to revel in all of the senses, can just bring that pleasure center to such an amazing heights if we're paying attention to that, right? And really, again, going back to being embodied, if we can feel the sensations on our skin and the temperature and, the tension or the release, I mean, all of that together, I think is just one of those things that when we feel when we do that with ourselves, and then if we're lucky enough to have a partner who we can share that with, and they are also embodied, I think that can just take that experience to the next level, to a higher plane, whatever you want to say and whatever you believe in. I think it's really can be extremely powerful.
Erica, I love that what you said. Whatever we believe in can be very powerful, because the belief system, sometimes some people come with all these ideas about the spirit that can be shameful. And, from someone that, it works with people with a faith base, sometimes it's healing in the spirit that really needs to happen in order for them to be able to fully express their sexuality, permission for their spirit to evolve and be embraced and loved and seen in a different way that doesn't shut it out in a closet or shame them, but loves them and says, this is a part of who I am, and like reigniting their spirit in a totally different way that they didn't even realize could be a part of their sexuality. They're like, oh, that's not, the spirit's a part of me, but it's not part of my sex. Like, it's just like this other thing over here that, so, even the fact that we're talking about spirit and we're talking about how it's like integral to sexuality I think it's pretty groundbreaking that we incorporate that in all of our clients and all of our coaching.
That's really spot on, Nicole. That's been the work that I've been doing since being introduced with the MEBES wheel. I find at first spirit and spirituality was something that's difficult to integrate. Maybe because that was the background I was in, and working with the MEBES wheel and integrating spirituality has been very enriching in my work nowadays. It's how do we heal the essence of you, right? The spiritual aspect in you, including if you are holding a strong religious belief, including navigating that, integrating that aspect in you. It could be really powerful way of working. And so that is MEBES: a mind, energy, body, emotion, and spirits. So sometimes it's good to just reflect on what works well in your MEBES wheel and what do you want to do more of. And of course, what areas in the MEBES wheel that block your expression and need working on. And that's where we can all come together, help you out, right? I guess it would be good to have maybe our listener to throw us some questions around this area. Maybe we can all chip in, chime in, and then help out. Of course, engaging us in sex coaching. I mean, you can choose amongst our diverse background and nature and time zone. That's something that we all can chip in and help out, right?
So the MEBES model is kind of the foundation of how we all do our sex coaching. But as you can see, we are 5 sex therapists, sex coaches, sexologists from all over the world who really have a very diverse background and passion about lots of different areas of sexuality. So this is kind of our intro to our podcast, but really we wanted to share the foundation that we all have in common, which is the MEBES model, in order for all of our listeners to get a grasp of what brings us together and how we move through our future podcasts as well as with our clients. So we're really excited for you all to be here. We're excited for you to learn and get juicy with us and learn more about your sexuality. So stay tuned for our next podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, send us some love by sharing, hitting subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps us connect to more incredible people like you. If you want to learn more about sex coaching or therapy, you can find us at sexandbreakfastpodcast.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at sexandbreakfastpodcast. The people helping us cook this all up are Michael Merle, creating our tasty tunes, dishing out our audio and video is Max Rainier, and our delectable visual designs by Brie Vilaubi.